like it to be if you could expand
I would
things?
certainly like it to be at a minimum, to allow that.
Why?
Okay. Now here he comes. He's now going to explain to Trump about waterboarding and why it's not being used. The reasons why. Because this guy is a defender of the administration that said waterboarding is terrorist.
Why do you think we don't have those? Why do you think we don't have waterboarding?
Because I think we're weak. I think we've become very weak and ineffective. I think that's why we're not beating ISIS. It's that mentality.
But you think people got rid of the law to be weak?
No, I think that we are weak. I think we're weak. We cannot beat ISIS. We should beat ISIS very quickly. General Patton would have had ISIS down in about 3 days. General Douglas MacArthur. We are playing by a different set of rules. We are, let me just put it differently. When the ISIS people chop off the heads and they then go back to their homes and they talk, and they hear we're talking about waterboarding like it's the worst thing in the world, and they've just drowned 100 people and chopped off 50 heads, they must think we are a little bit on the weak side.
The reason that the waterboarding was a number of reasons, but one of them was because the worry was that if America does that, then our soldiers, American hostages, will be treated even worse. That's the argument. What do you think?
They're doing that anyway. They're killing our soldiers when they capture them. I mean, they're doing that anyway. Now, if that were the case, in other words, we won't do it and you don't do it, but we're not playing by those rules. They're not, why, did somebody tell ISIS, look, we're going to treat your guys well, would you please do us a favor and treat our guys well? They don't do that. We are playing by rules, but they have no rules. It's very hard to win when that's the case.
Isn't that what separates us from the savages?
No, I don't think so. No, we have to beat the savages.
And therefore throw all rules out?
We have to beat the savages.
By being savages?
No, look, you have to play the game the way they're playing the game. You're not going to win if we're soft and they have no rules. Now, I want to stay within the laws. I want to do all of that. But I think we have to increase the laws because the laws are not working. Obviously, all you have to do is take a look at what's going on. And they're getting worse. They're chopping, and we're worrying about waterboarding. I just think I think our priorities are mixed up.
All right, so we can explain everything you need to know about this. This is really simple. And we've actually gone over this a long time ago on a previous episode, long time ago. So you have to understand.
Explain to people what waterboarding is, because I still have people I talk to now that don't know.
I want to zoom out and go all the way to the beginning.
Okay.
And we'll get to waterboarding. Here's the thing you need to understand, that if you've ever heard the phrase "all is fair in love and war," really what they're saying is you got wars between two different countries. There really aren't any rules initially. Now, what you can do to keep it from getting too savage, as he used that word savage, or what I use the word uncivilized. If you want to have a civilized war, then you have to come to an agreement between the two sides that are warring on what lines should not be crossed. Like, for instance, when if I were to capture somebody, am I allowed to torture them to death, or should I treat them humanely? The two sides should have an actual agreement. You can't just say, well, I hope that they don't torture the people that they capture. I hope they don't kill them or behead them or whatever.
Or do what they did to our troops in Vietnam. I mean, it's just
right.
You put toothpicks in their eyelids to keep them awake for days on end.
Right, and here's the thing: if you don't have an agreement, you can hope you could send them video of us treating their captured humanely and hope that they act in kind. That would be an idea. That would be an idea to do. Or you could have a treaty made. And in our case, we have the Geneva Convention, where a whole bunch of countries, and I don't believe Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq and all those. I'm not sure if any of those were signers of it. I don't know who all were the signers of the Geneva Convention. But you can't assume that a country that did not sign it is going to adhere to those rules. Okay, so you have to start off with the initial condition of war, as there being no rules other than one side's trying to beat the other side's trying to beat that side. Okay, that's the only rules. You have to dominate them completely until they either surrender completely. And when I mean surrender completely, you're literally saying, okay, we are going to completely yield to every single demand. And if your demand is to own our land and to force us to accept your ideology, then so be it. That's what the spoils come to the victor. And in some cases, if you look in historical context, there's a lot of cases where part of losing the war means that every single male in that entire population gets killed. And I'm not saying that America's doing that. It's become an American, a civilized custom of Americans to not go that route. We're not Genghis Khan, but those were the rules for Genghis Khan back in the day. They would take all the women and kill all the men, and it was that simple. And those were the rules back then. So there has to be an initial condition of a set of agreed rules for a civilized war to take place. Now, let's take the next step. Let's say that both sides have certain rules that they agree upon. And let's use World War II as a perfect example. Initially, when Great Britain and England were fighting each other, this is like before America even got involved in the war, and they were doing bombing campaigns and everything like that, there was a agreed upon civilized way to fight these wars, and one of the rules would be when you go over with all your bombers, you want to try to only target military targets, which would be any kind of like a military base or maybe an installation that would be used for military purposes. It could even be like an oil refinery.
Okay, Pakistan has not signed on to it. Afghanistan has.
Has, okay.
Iran did back in the 50s. Iraq did back in the 50s. Iran did recently.
Okay, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm explaining to you why that will not matter. And I'll tell you, and this is how it works. So in World War II, Germany and Great Britain were fighting each other, and they were sending over bombers. They were doing bombing campaigns and stuff like that. And one day, a German bomber strayed off course, and of course they don't know this at the time, but you find out years and years later that they did not mean to bomb a city, a civilian city. They did not mean to, but one or more of the bombers, maybe the whole entire thing, went off course, and they end up just bombing the ever-living hell out of a civilian population, some city. And in outrage and in retaliation, Great Britain said, okay, so they retaliated by sending over bombers to purposely attack a civilian target in retaliation. At that point, Germany said, okay, well then the gloves are off. Now all this could have been avoided had somehow Germany been able to convince Great Britain, guys, my bad, we did not mean to attack that civilian target. We did. It was an accident. My bad. Maybe that would have been enough. I don't know. And to be honest with you, I would think that a civilized country like England would have said, all right, I'll tell you what. We'll accept your apology, but it better not happen again or else the gloves are off. That could happen.
Sure.
That very well could happen.
Sure.
And then the second time it happens, then England could say, all right, gloves are off. We're just bombing everything. That's what happened in World War II. And that is what happens in war. And now let's fast forward to our fighting in the Middle East. When you are fighting an enemy that breaks the rules that you make for yourself, those rules are no longer in effect. It's as simple as that. And when they're violating all kinds of Geneva Convention by torturing our prisoners, killing prisoners, and killing people that are surrendering or whatever, or even killing a prisoner because he's a Christian and he doesn't want to convert to Islam. So, okay, we got to kill them under Sharia law. All those are war crimes, and we can't just say, hey, when we find you, we're going to prosecute you. No, gloves are off, and that's the way it's got to be. And if you don't like that, then you need to get off of the news and stop watching this and just detach yourself from what's happening. Or just be a surrender monkey. It's as simple as that. So that's the way it is. And you know, I think Trump did a very good job. I think this is actually the second time I heard this answer.
Taking it out of context now, though.
What, we are?
No, they are. Some of the media are reporting that clip that I just played you. Some of the media are reporting Trump advocates not playing by the rules.
Well, no, it's what you have to do once the other side. I mean, you got to understand how war works, and you have to be willing. Here's what you need.
World War II, when we were fighting World War II, American leaders knew if we lost that war, we would be tried for war crimes.
Yeah, actually, Robert McNamara said that.
Yeah.
He said it in the 90s when he was being interviewed for his movie Fog of War, the documentary. They asked him, do you think that you and Curtis LeMay would be tried for war crimes had you lost the war? And they said, yeah, absolutely. We expected to be tried for war crimes if we lost, and we knew that. And once the gloves are off, I mean, the gloves are off, and you're all in. It's either you win with an unconditional surrender, or you lose, and you probably end up getting executed after being convicted of war crimes. But you know what? We won, and so the victors don't try their side for war crimes.
You don't try yourself. No.
Right, and that's just the way it is. You know, if Germany had won the war, none of the Nazis would have tried their own Nazi soldiers for war crimes. They would have just said, hey, guys, you remember that race called the Jews? Well, yeah, they're no longer around.
Woo.
That would have been it.
Well,
you would have had to live with it.
Well, think about France. The French language, or even the French culture.
It would have been gone.
Twice it would have been gone.
You don't just...
The Kaiser would have taken it, and then Hitler would have taken it. It would have been all over with. The French, you would have been gone twice.
And you can't stand up and say, hey, that's not civilized. Well, guess what?
We won.
When you're dead, you don't have any say as to whether or not it's civilized or not. And so it's this whole thing with the struggle between the Middle East and the West is all just a giant war of culture. It's a culture war. They want to take over the world with Sharia and Islam, and have everything be ruled by Sharia law. And that's really the catalyst for all this, is that they demand that the world, the entire world, that every human being on earth worship Muhammad and adhere to Sharia law.
Right.
If they were tolerant and said, you know what, we like Sharia law and we like Islam and we like to worship Muhammad, but if you don't want to, that's okay. If they had that attitude, there would be no war. You don't see the Buddhists in Asia saying, well, you know what, it's our policy now that if you do not adhere to the Buddhist way of life, we got to kill you.
Right.
If that was their philosophy, we'd be at war with the East. But we're not at war with the East, and that's why.
Check this out. Lesson number 7, belief and seeing are both often wrong, by Robert McNamara.
Yeah.
He also said that being prepared to re-examine your reasoning, and then also lesson number 9, in order to do good, you may have to engage in evil.
Right. Actually, that movie gets one of his lessons wrong. Totally wrong. And I was shocked.
Lesson number 11, you can't change human nature.
Right. And that right there is that's a cry for anti-communism.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And he was a Democrat, by the way. Total Democrat.
Wow.
But he wasn't the kind of Democrat that you see today. I think, the movie was created by somebody who you could just tell he couldn't stand McNamara because of what had happened with Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But anyway.
So waterboarding.
So, okay, let's talk about waterboarding. It is a interrogation technique. It would have never been considered torture by people from the past. 50 years ago. Never would have been considered torture. The definition of torture